The following program contains mature subject matter. Viewer discretion is advised.
Jennifer, it's interesting. When I talk to you, Doc, I see something I see in the clinic all the time, and that's when folks have gone through some things that were traumatic, right? It wasn't 100% traumatic. There were some bright spots in there, but as they tell us the story, it's very interesting that the face doesn't match the content. And I can see that with you as you talk through it and gloss over some of those points. The one thing I don't want to gloss over is you said you went into rehab. How long have you been sober?
I've been sober in February. It'll be 12 years.
Congrats on the 12 years.
Congratulations.
Yes. Yes.
Almost 12 years.
That's
no, it's very challenging.
That's a
to
big
get off
deal.
the pharmaceuticals.
And I'm sure it wasn't easy with
No.
the poly,
Right.
drug situation. She was,
Since
that
a
litany of
kid.
drugs.
Right.
And some of those drugs, the sleeping pills particularly, very, very tough.
Very tough
to break
get
that
off.
habit.
Very tough to get off
Right.
of. And to change gears from the substance to the trauma, Doc, when you experience trauma at such an early age and as a young woman, one or two things can happen, right? Either you can go in one direction where you become over-sexualized, and that is the primary way you look to seek that connection, right? I've heard you talk about being worried about developing a sex addiction, or you can go in the opposite direction because the trauma and the violation was so shameful and so painful that you never want to be vulnerable and share that part of yourself with anybody ever again. How did that trauma show up in your life and your intimacy in particular right now, Jennifer?
The biggest lesson is that none of it was really intimacy that I saw, right? It was just like being physically attracted to beauty and being conditioned and sort of brainwashed to believe that this is how you connect with people, on this on a scale from 1 to 10, how do I critique them? Are they worthy of being sexually attracted to? So I've had to reprogram how I look at people and connections and start to understand that it's about spiritual and emotional connection rather than physical. And that is like a lifelong journey to overcome.
And Jennifer, I understand that you actually even went to a doctor to talk about the pain that you were experiencing during some of your sexual encounters, and they weren't able to find anything. What did they tell you?
I'm mostly just over the years, just being intimate with whomever, doesn't even matter, right? I'm very guarded, and I don't, I in certain situations, I'm just very uncomfortable really with that physical intimacy. And some of it I even associate with pain. Yep. And I would go to doctors is there something wrong with me? I don't know, maybe I'm just small or this or that, but they're no. But all of them basically have said to me that, it just seems did you go through some kind of childhood trauma or did, how did you, all of them have sort of said that to me.
Well, we talk about it, Dr. Ish. The biggest, most important sexual organ is between the ears, 100%. Right? And, the brain, we lose sight of how important the brain is and our whole attitude and feeling comfortable.
It's everything.
And sexual experiences being healthy.
Yes. Yeah.
Psychologically and physically.
And physically.
They go hand in hand.
They go hand in hand.